Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Alan Barry Labakan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. Welcome to my 2023 outlook. I'm going to be talking about some key trends. These are market moving trends. I'm also going to talk about a group of companies, some themes of why I like those companies so much. I'm also going to talk at the end about a group of companies that I'm working on interviews with for next week. Got some exciting news stories to talk about on that. So stay tuned throughout the entire show. My 2022 year in review was quite extensive. It ran for over 2 hours. So there's lots of good information on there. And you could look in the description of that video that you can find on YouTube. Look for Rocks and Stocks News at YouTube. You can also find it on my Substack page, site, which is rocksandstocks.substack.com. Alrighty, let's get into the trends. I'm going to share my screen here. And the first thing I'm going to bring up is the US dollar index. Okay, so as you can see, why I follow the US dollar index so closely is because the most watched prices of commodities is what they're doing in the US dollar. And so what they're doing in the US dollar, what the US dollar does has a big impact on those metals prices that I follow so closely. And by extension, what the metals do, so goes the prices of the companies that are involved in those metals. So what the US dollar does is a major market moving thing. And there's a few things I want to point out here. For most of 2022, starting way back here, it had a massive move all the way up to here. There you go. And what caused that move was the Federal Reserve aggressively raising interest rates to fight inflation. So in September, I believe what happened was the currency traders of the world realized that the Federal Reserve was getting towards the end of its rope. In December, prior to their December meeting of the Federal Reserve, Chairman Powell had he was speaker at a conference, and he talked about their concerns for over tightening. They are over tightening. Usually in the past, the Fed would do a couple of moves and then wait to see how the data played out. They've made multiple aggressive moves to take interest rates from near zero to 4.5. They also talked in their December meeting that their internal estimates are that their peak rate will be somewhere between 5.25, 5.5. So they only have about 3/4 of a point left in them. Whether they do that in their next meeting with a 0.5 point, followed by a 1/4 point, or their next 3 meetings, a 1/4 point, who knows? We'll see when those meetings happen. But at the end of the day, it is clear that they are getting towards the end of their rate increases. And I think the main reason that they're concerned about over tightening is if you look at the sales numbers of housing, that has fallen off of a cliff. It's on the steepest decline that it's ever been on since they started recording housing sales. So the housing market is broken. You look at the yield curves, and the yield curves are telling everybody that the economy is headed for a recession. They still think, the Federal Reserve, still think in their infinite lack of wisdom, that they can have a soft landing. When you go from zero interest rates to, let's say, 5.5, and you spent 14 years at near zero interest rates, so your real estate market and your economy was built on near zero interest rates for 14 years. When you move up that aggressively, you're bound to break things. And that's why in the past, the Federal Reserve would do 2, 3 moves, and then they would wait to see what the data. This time they've been relentless. And that relentlessness, I think, is what's causing the situation in the housing market and will cause a steeper recession. And then the Federal Reserve later in the year will have to lower interest rates and do more stimulus to fix what they caused. They caused the inflation to start with, and now they're breaking things, and they're going to have to lower interest rates to fight that. But as you can see in the currency market, the US dollar is under severe pressure. It's in fact going through a death cross right now. I think you're going to see that 200-day start to roll into a bearish situation, and the 50-day is already on a very steep decline. So these are all pointing to much lower prices for the price of the US dollar. Now let's move over to gold. As you can see, what often happens is the gold moves in the opposite direction of what's happening with the US dollar. So it bottomed, it had a triple bottom in September, October, November. Then in early November, it blasted off, broke through its 50-day moving average. In early December, it broke through its 200-day moving average. It's now trading significantly above its 200-day moving average, almost $100 per ounce above its 200-day moving average. And you can see that it's maybe 10 days to 2 weeks away from a golden cross. If we have another day or two like we did today, where it was up 30 or more dollars, you're going to see that that golden cross happens closer to a week than 2 weeks. But I think inevitably we're heading towards a golden cross while the US dollar is heading towards a death cross. Now, silver is doing what it always does. It overperforms on the downside, and it overperforms when things are moving up for the price of gold. But nonetheless, you got to watch what's going on with gold so closely, because what happens with gold, it's a sentiment driver for not only the metals complex, but also for the sentiment towards gold stocks, and by extension, other metal stocks. And later, when I start showing you some stock charts, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. But for now, let's look at silver. And it triple bottomed in July, September, late September, October, and then had a big breakout in early November, just like the price of gold. It blasted through the 50-day moving average, went and has gone aggressively above the 200-day moving average. And right here, it went through a golden cross. And I believe that silver, much like gold, is headed much higher in 2023. One of the trends that I follow very closely is the January effect. And what happens in January, early January, has a way of impacting what happens in January. And what happens in January is often an indicator of what's going to happen throughout the year. Things that are soft in January usually go lower. Things that are strong in January usually go higher. A main reason for that is this is when a lot of funds are repositioning themselves for the year ahead. And right now it looks like they're happy to own gold, silver, and other metals, and not so happy to own stocks and the US dollar. So again, the January effect is setting up very nicely for the price of gold. And again, it's a market driver, market sentiment driver for the metals complex, as well as the mining companies, whether that's the juniors, the intermediates, or the majors, tend to follow in a similar path. Okay, so now we talked about gold, we talked about silver. I predict that gold in 2023 is going to increase by 20 to 25% this year. and let's say it goes 25% up, you could easily see the price of silver go 50 to 75% up. So I think we're headed for a very good year for the price of gold and the price of silver. But then again, I watch the copper price, because copper is kind of like gold when it comes to the sentiment driver for base metals. Okay, so nonetheless, it does follow a similar path as gold. It bottomed, had a big breakout in November, traded well through its 50-day moving average, and has touched that 200-day moving average several times it did in November, and it did that again in December. And looky here, in the first week of January, it's now trading above the 200-day moving average. And you can see a very narrow window here. It's maybe 2 to 3 weeks away from a golden cross, which is very bullish for copper. And some people will say, well, if the US goes into a recession, isn't that going to affect demand for copper? And it will to a degree, but the biggest driver is two things. One is China, and China is now going reducing their restrictions on because of COVID, and as they get back to a more normal economy, I think that you're going to see the demand for copper pick up quite aggressively. And that's why it's starting to have a very strong move here. And the other big driver is, excuse me, is the revolution that's happening in electronic vehicles. So the electronic vehicle revolution is not stopping. It's going to use a lot of copper. And when the Federal Reserve and other central banks have to stimulate, which I think they'll do in the second half of 2023, it's going to, what do you think they're going to try to stimulate? One of the things that's going to see that stimulus money and the benefit of lowering interest rates are electric vehicles. So I think the worries about the U.S. economic slowdown are how do I say it? The words are escaping me right now, but there's an over concern for what happens in the U.S. economy what it will do to copper, that I think will be offset by what's happening in China and electric vehicles. So I think that we're heading into a very good market for base metals. It might lag by about 6 months. I think the trend will be positive, but it might not be as aggressive as gold and silver. But nonetheless, I think it will really pick up steam in the second half of the year. Alrighty, let's get into some stocks now. As I talk about stocks, I'm going to talk about a few different themes. One of those themes is I'm very bullish on the Eureka gold mining camp in Nevada. The reason that I'm so bullish on that is because of this company right here, i-80 Gold. i-80 Gold, sorry about that. Let me just get this out a little further so we can look at the year in perspective. So i-80 Gold really had a dramatic move above its 50-day moving average and its 200-day moving average in the first 2 weeks of November, and is now trading aggressively above its 200-day moving average, its 50-day moving average, and has already gone through a golden cross. And this is kind of indicative of why I would rather own gold and other metals in the ground than I would own the actual metals, is because when you get a more bullish market, you're going to outperform if you can find quality like an i-80 Gold. And what caused that big move in the price of i-80 Gold was when they announced in November the results from just a spectacular hole at a CRD, a carbonate replacement deposit discovery that they made at the south side of the Archimedes pit. Archimedes was a gold mine, open pit oxide deposit, and that it stopped production when they ran out of oxides, and around the same time that they were running out of oxides, or what they thought was, they had a pit wall failure, and that ended the Archimedes pit mine. Years later, i-80 Gold gets their hands on it. They look at the data. They start drilling the Ruby Deeps to the west of the pit, and they find big, thick intersections, 70, 80 meters of high-grade gold with excellent continuity, and have continued to grow that deposit. And then they drilled above that and closer to the pit, and they found the 426 zone. And the 426 zone is right at the bottom of the west side of the pit, which gives them easy access to that. Another great thing about the 426 zone is it's oxide, so they can, and high grade, so they can mine that and make a lot of money and use that to get them down to Ruby Deeps, and then start mining that sulfide material at Ruby Deeps, and use the mill that the processing complex that they bought to process that sulfide material. So it's an excellent combination. On its own, Ruby Deep's 426 and some of the satellites around it look like a world-class gold deposit, a gold mine in the making. But then to the south of the pit, they started looking at the potential for a CRD. And what they found was a classic CRD with silver, lead, zinc. I say classic in the sense that it has those metals. What makes it exceptional is those metals are some of the highest grades that you're going to see in a CRD anywhere in the world. To make it even better, it also has an overprint of high-grade gold, bonanza-grade gold in some instances. So when you look at the rock value of what they've found, almost all of their holes are over $1,000 worth of metals in the rock per ton, and it even goes up to $5,000, over $5,000, making it some of the most valuable rock that's being found in Nevada or really anywhere in the world. That's why I think that this Eureka mining camp is going to be such a important camp in Nevada and possibly in the entire world. And i-80 Gold is the leader because they've got a world-class gold deposit and a world-class CRD with the bonanza and high-grade gold kicker. And so what you need to sort of tick off the boxes in a CRD is you need the faulting. These are the cracks in the earth that allow the fluids that contain those metals to make their way up to surface. Then you need let's call it a sponge. You need rocks that are allow those fluids to then spread out when they get close to surface. Then the most important thing you need is the grade. And they have all of those boxes checked off. Now, the other thing that's quite impressive is that it's only about 10-minute drive to the town of Eureka. Their team stays in the houses that they rent in the town of Eureka, and they drive a 10-minute drive, and their coffee stays warm while they're driving out to work. So they got that spectacular access and infrastructure of a city right beside where they're finding this tremendous stuff that they're finding at the Ruby Hill project. But that's not the only reason that I think that Eureka will be the most important camp in Nevada for sure, possibly in the world, is right beside them, about 2,000 meters from where I-80's drilled into their CRD. Paycore has drilled into a CRD that looks very much like what they're finding next door at I-80. It has the high-grade silver, lead, zinc that you find in a CRD. Again, when you compare CRDs to CRDs, those metals alone are some of the best grades that you're going to find in CRDs all over the world. But then they've also got this high-grade kicker of high-grade to bonanza grades of gold, overprinting the CRD. So the metals that are in the CRD and in the gold system probably followed the same path of least resistance through those cracks in the earth, and the same kind of rock that you have at I-80s continues on to Paycore's ground, and the network of faulting that is up at I-80 Gold also continues down to Paycore's ground. So both of these companies have a special situation. Extremely high value rock because of the high grades of silver, lead, zinc, and the overprint of high-grade gold. But they're not the only ones. Right beside them is Golden Lake Exploration. I'm an advisor to Golden Lake Exploration, and all three of these companies are sponsors of my shows. Let me first show you Paycore, just so you can see that they're following a similar path. Broke out in November, announced some great results, breaks over the 50-day moving average, is well above its 50-day moving average. The 50-day moving average is moving on a nice bullish slope trajectory there. They've only been trading since April, so they're a young publicly traded company, but really hitting the ground running with what they have at their CRD right beside, about 2,000 meters from where I-80's found theirs. And that runway of the right kind of rocks and the right kind of faulting continues for about 1,500 meters on I-80's ground, and then right through the entire package of ground that Paycore has. So those two companies have a great situation. And then Golden Lake Exploration is right beside Paycore, and they also have a high-grade CRD with your silver, lead, and zinc, and an overprint of bonanza-grade gold. So all three of these companies are in a excellent situation, finding very valuable rock. Their stocks are all following the same path. As you can see with Golden Lake here, it also went through its 50-day moving average in November, has now traded above its 200-day moving average, and is probably 3 to 4 weeks away from a golden cross. And I think that the news that's coming out of I-80 Gold, Paycore, and when Golden Lake starts drilling to follow up on their CRD hit, that all three of these companies are headed much higher in 2023. All right. There's another company in that camp, that Eureka mining camp, that is also a sponsor of my show. And I think very highly of what they're doing, which is Timberline. Now, Timberline, let me pull up their chart. Timberline is not focused on CRDs yet, but I think they will be. The reason that I say that is they're focused on drilling a resource and growing that gold resource. And as they grow it to the east, they're getting higher grades and it's getting bigger. And the mineralization and the rock packages and the faulting all is pointing towards the east. And in close proximity to that is a very large geophysical anomaly that quite possibly could be showing them where the heat engine for the gold mineralization came from in their resource. To the north of that, they tagged what I think is the edge of a CRD. It didn't have the kind of numbers that really gets people excited, but it gets me excited because I put it into the context of what i-80 Gold, Paycore, and Golden Lake have found. And then they start finding sniffs of a CRD in their drilling. And there's been a lot of past mining of CRDs at i-80 Gold, at Paycore, at Golden Lake, and at Timberline. It suggests that this whole region is fertile for gold deposits and CRD deposits. Timberline is already digging into a gold deposit. They have a bunch of pending assay results that could be out in the next couple of weeks. And I think what that's going to do is, you see how their trends, their 200-day and their 50-day have kind of been moving sideways. The 50-day got weaker, but now it's looking like it's bottoming. And with the potential for the pending news that they have, I think that that's what could drive this 50-day into a golden cross in the month of January. And with what's going on around them, with their neighbors to the north, with Golden Lake, Paycore, and also i-80, plus what's happening with gold, I think that there's plenty of catalyst to move this stock much higher in the near term and set it up for a great 2023. Okay, now another theme that another couple companies that I talked about in my 2022 year in review is Walker River Resources. Walker River Resources is another company that's having quite a powerful chart. As you can see, in early December, it took off through its 50-day moving average. Then in the middle of the month, it went through its 200-day moving average. It's trading aggressively above its 200-day moving average. The 50-day moving average is on a very bullish trajectory that looks like it's only a couple weeks away from a golden cross that will take it much higher. The catalyst for them is that they drilled at their LaPon Canyon project. At LaPon Canyon, there's been historical mining and their own drilling that shows that there's distribution of high-grade gold from side to side in this LaPon mountain for about 600 meters, and from top to bottom. At the very top, they found their hotspot zone. Top to bottom, you're looking at 800 or 900 meters. So this is a very big area of widespread high-grade gold mineralization. Their drilling, they went on top of the mountain where it flattens out, and they were able to drill a series of vertical holes into that hotspot zone. Those results are pending. When they were announcing the drilling, that's what got the stock more optimistic and more bullish. And those results are pending. They could come out anytime now. I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks that we'll hear how their drilling went at LaPon Canyon or at the LaPon Mountain. Ultimately, I think that what they have there is a very powerful and big gold mineralizing system. The reason that I say that is one is the widespread gold mineralization throughout this mountain. Secondly, you also see a very big alteration zone. When the fluids that are carrying the high-grade gold hit the country rock, it alters chemically that country rock, and you can see the alteration package from Google Earth. It's very big, and there's a network of faults in there. So they have all the characteristics of this being a very big, powerful gold mineralizing system. I think that's got great continuity to it. The reason they have had challenges to prove that continuity is they've been drilling from a side of a mountain, which makes it very hard to follow that. You're not dealing with something like this. You're dealing with something like this, and you got to drill into that, which makes it challenging. But now at the top of the mountain, they're able to drill these vertical holes into that hotspot zone where they had great grades. They drilled a series, I think it's 7 to 10 holes up there. Those are pending. What that will give them ability to do is they can then start attacking it from top down and with vertical holes, a bunch of vertical holes, to follow the mineralization and see how it reacts in 3 dimensions as you go down the mountain. Once they have that information, now when you go back to the side of the mountain and try to stick holes in there, you have much higher predictability of where that zone is and how it's reacting as it makes its way down the mountain. Nearby, they have the Pikes Peak target that they also drilled in November, December time. And that looks like a porphyry that pumped, that could be the heat engine that pumped those gold-bearing fluids through the faulting and up the mountain in the cracks in the earth that are quite distinct and into this big alteration area. So Walker River has a lot of good things going. The stock is a power chart. I think it's I think they're really close to releasing some very important data from their drilling. And I think that that's going to make them go through a golden cross within the next couple of weeks. Another company in Nevada that I'm very bullish on is Blackrock. They became a sponsor of my website in a few weeks ago. And why I invited Andrew Pollard on this to interview him and ask him if he'd like to be a sponsor and do a series of interviews was because they announced results from a hole that they drilled at their Silver Cloud project. And this is sort of away from where they had drilled in the past, a significant distance actually. And it's right near their Northwest Canyon. So they've got a big crack in the earth there. And in close proximity to that, they found an epithermal vein that had bonanza grades of gold and silver in it. And now they've got to get back on there and drill around that bonanza stuff and understand more about that epithermal vein. These can be very exciting. You look to their north is the Midas mine. It was an epithermal vein. In fact, it got Franco-Nevada off to the start of being an important royalty company in the 1990s that made it one of the best performing gold stocks out there, and it was a royalty company, was because of what they had at Midas. And then you go to their east, they got Hollister, same kind of situation, epithermal veins, and with high grade in it. Now they've got a high grade vein with bonanza grades of gold and silver at their Silver Cloud project. But that's not really the driver of the company, and why I think it's an undervalued play, and why I also picked it as one of my tax loss selling season picks was at Tonopah. They have a resource of very high grade silver. And they have, since putting out their maiden resource, they have expanded that mineralization for almost double, or maybe even a little bit more than double the size of what they have in the resource. And when I interviewed Andrew Pollard, he also pointed out a couple of important things about that resource. When SilverCrest put out their first resource on their maiden resource on their Las Chispas mine, it was around the same size and maybe a little less grade than what Blackrock has put out in their first maiden resource. And it makes they have the highest grade undeveloped silver deposit in the business. So that's the underlying argument of why I think that they're so undervalued. And I called them they were in my deep value plays picks. I think that they've got the ability to grow that that resource quite dramatically, and they've got a bunch of pending holes from their resource expansion efforts. And another thing that Andrew mentioned in the interview I did with him, you can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News. He also mentioned that after SilverCrest made their maiden resource, they were then able to focus in more on the highest grade portions of that resource. When they did that, they expanded the resource dramatically and they improved the grade dramatically. Now you're already talking about a resource here with a very high grade of silver, 450 grams approximately. And now they're going to do the same thing. They're going to continue to expand the resource, and they're going to focus in on the high grade portions of the resource and keep following those. And it's wide open, this whole network of epithermal veins. And the reason I keep bringing up SilverCrest is SilverCrest has one of the best new mines in the mining business. It's a real cash machine, and it's also an epithermal vein system. So it has a lot of maybe Blackrock Silver has, the way I should say it is, Blackrock Silver has the potential to be the kind of success that SilverCrest was solely on their Tonopah project. But now they got this Silver Cloud bonanza grades of gold and silver epithermal veins to look at on their Silver Cloud project. Plus, they got another kicker, which is their lithium. They found some very exciting looking lithium numbers. So this company has a heck of a lot on the go. And as you can see here, the 50-day has been basing. With all the pending news that they have coming out, I think you're going to start to see very soon this 50-day moving average go on a very bullish trajectory that drives it through the 200-day moving average aggressively. And I think that this is just a deep value play, tax loss selling play, and they've got a group of assets that look like they're worth a lot more than the valuation the company is right now, and will generate a lot of news as we speak. Any day now, they could start coming out with news. So that's my Nevada stuff. Orogenic gold systems are also something I'm very excited about. And the reason that I'm so excited about orogenic gold systems is because you look at what happened to Kirkland Lake. I know that they've been bought out, but I'm wondering if we can still find their old chart. Let me see. Oh no, Kirkland Lake, it's no longer a symbol that we can look at. Nonetheless, what happened with Kirkland Lake was they were a pretty big company, and then they found their swan zone at the Fosterville mine in Australia, started mining that, made them one of the lowest cost producers of gold in the business, drove their stock through the roof, and it was one of the best performing stocks in the gold space. And ultimately they were bought out for, I think, around $10 billion or something like that. Made the shareholders just a phenomenal return for the shareholders. And that's why I like these orogenic gold systems so much. Now, what makes orogenic gold systems quite exciting is that they have these thick, big cracks in the earth that go down very deep, thousands of meters deep. And this allows the fluids to make their way up. And those deep cracks also create secondary cracks that are important to these orogenic gold systems. Those secondary cracks are often where you find swan zones. So what Sokoman Minerals has is in Newfoundland. They've been drilling away in close to surface, only down a couple 250 meters or so. They've been drilling into an orogenic gold system for the past few years. they've hit a lot of widespread high-grade gold mineralization, but it was generally over fairly narrow intersections. Nonetheless, it was suggestive that they are into an orogenic gold system. As they go deeper, they have the potential of finding a swan zone. So they drilled their deepest hole at their eastern trend, and sure enough, they hit a jewelry box. That's what I call them when they're things like the swan zone, just riddled with gold and high grade, and they're low cost to produce. And it looks like they found their first jewelry box that they announced back here in September, and it broke through the 50-day moving average, traded all the way up to the 200-day. Then it had some softness while they were waiting more data to drill their second hole into that, what they're calling their 463 zone. I call it a jewelry box. They call it their 463 zone. Their new model is that you've got the eastern trend going like this, and then you've got another trend coming up at an opposite direction, and it's at the juncture of those two where they hit the jewelry box. And this is exactly like the Swan Zone at Fosterville. And sure enough, they got spectacular grades. What makes it quite a bit more exciting is this is probably 400 meters closer to surface than the Swan Zone. So you've got their first jewelry box hit, thick intersection of bonanza grade gold, high grade to bonanza grade gold, and then they had put a camera down the hole. They had a structural geologist that then can look at the rock as it's going down the hole and what he sees when they get into the zone. He's the one who came up with this model that you've got the eastern trend going like this, then you've got this other one coming up from the west. And it's at that juncture where they hit the 463 zone. So they drilled another hole into it and tagged it again. That's their 505 hole. Those assay results are pending. It's obviously caused some more optimism in the stock. I think they're only a couple weeks away from a golden cross. The two catalysts that I think that could drive that through the golden cross and much higher is when they announce that they're going to start drilling again in about 9 or 10 days from now, and when they get the assay results back from their 505 hole. Bottom line is, I think that they've tagged into the top of a swan zone, and they're gonna roll up their sleeves and get after it, because this is a really important juncture when you're exploring for an orogenic gold system. Another orogenic gold system that I'm very excited about is the one that Galantas has in Northern Ireland. Let me pull their stock chart up. I only ever picked one company in Ireland. That was Dalradian. I started covering Dalradian at 25 cents a share early in their success. And ultimately, they were bought out for about $500 million at several multiples of that 25 cents. So it was a great pick for me. And this is the second pick that I've made in Ireland. I'm seeing some tremendous things from them on an orogenic gold system. They've got the Kearney vein. They've got the Joshua vein. They've drilled several holes into those two veins close to surface, and they found widespread gold, high-grade gold mineralization. But what makes it also interesting is they have these a network of dilation zones. This is where the rock opens up and allows those fluids to sort of pool up a little bit, and the direction of those dilation zones and the mineralization and the veins themselves are going to help them to predictably go after the deeper, higher grade that is generally found as you go deeper into an orogenic gold system. But also, in close proximity to Joshua and Kearney, in the middle, they have the Kerr vein, and they have some other veins around it. These are all packed into a very tight area. And then you go very close to that is one of these big cracks in the earth. So what I think is happening here is that that big crack is your primary crack, and then you've got these secondary cracks in the earth that allow these fluids to make their way up and create these veins. And the big picture for me is, as they go deeper, I think that they're going to not only find higher and higher grade material, like the jewelry box that is the Swan Zone, but I think that these veins all have the potential to come together in close proximity to that big fault that's in just to the south of the network of these veins. So they are also at an important juncture for the exploration of an orogenic gold system. As you can see, their 50-day has been somewhat trending upwards, as has their 200-day. They're trending in the same direction and very tight to each other. And that's what I would call an inflection point. And with the news that they have pending as they drill deeper into the orogenic gold system, I have a lot of confidence that they're going to deliver some great stuff. And so I think the next major move is as you go through this inflection point, you then start going into a much more bullish trend for that stock. And Galantas Gold is another of my orogenic gold picks. Another of my orogenic gold picks is Amex. I just did an interview earlier today with Kelly Malcolm. You can find that on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, or on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. And Kelly and I talked about their orogenic gold system. Now, they're very much advanced compared to Sokoman and Galantas. But what they found is a high-grade zone that has excellent continuity from surface all the way down to 1,000 meters, and it remains open to go deeper. And that's the classic sort of model for chasing a swan zone. But I think what they've already got in their high-grade zone has the kind of continuity to make for a underground mine. Right beside that, they have at surface their Denise zone, which is an open pit target that looks like it's got very nice grades for an open pit target. And as they work down through, if it goes into production, they would mine the Denise zone first, then they would have easy access to the high-grade zone, which is right beside it. Another interesting thing that Kelly Malcolm talked about in the interview that I did with him today is it looks like as the Denise zone goes deeper, it's following in parallel to the high-grade zone. And as you get down to about 750 meters, it looks like they are coming together. And that suggests that the feeder or the path comes together, and that's a very exciting area for an orogenic gold system. Then they've got other deposits around there in close proximity that all could be coming from the same system, which they likely are. And then you follow the two faults, one's on the north end, one's on the south end. Right at the contact of those faults is where they found their zones. And then those zones come together as you move more towards the east. That's a very exciting area for me, because I think that that's where you might be running into the source of all of the gold mineralization that's been found in multiple zones on their Perron project. So this is an exciting and a very exciting orogenic gold system as well. Let's take a look at Amex. I also picked these guys as a tax loss selling pick. I look for them when they're doing this at the end of the year, when they've got assets that are being undervalued simply because of tax loss selling. And this is often what you see when you go into the new year. Look at how it ended the year here at, let's say, $1.69. Just in the first 4 trading days of the year, already closed at $1.92. This one's doing exactly what you want to see in a tax loss selling stock pick. Very happy to have made that pick. And I was really happy to get an update from Kelly Malcolm. These guys got tons of pending news. And I'm really liking what I see here. The stock is now trading significantly above the 50-day moving average. What you're going to see, I think, happen is that 50-day moving average starts on an upwards trajectory that takes it through the 200-day moving average, probably in the second half of January. This is a company that's got a heck of a news flow and coming up. And I'm very bullish about Amex. And because I did that interview with Kelly, you can go to that to learn more about what they've got going on, because we had an extensive interview. All right. So now another theme that I had was my base metal company, 9 Mile Metals. This is my favorite base metal company. Late last year, they went through a golden cross. And here's why I like golden crosses so much. Look at how this 50-day moving average has stayed significantly above the 200-day moving average for the entire 2022. And the 200-day moving average is on an upslope. It's now trading a penny or two above the 200-day moving average. And they've got a bunch of pending news. What caused this big excitement here was when they started talking about the discovery of a high-grade lens of massive sulfides. It's a thick lens, 10 meters. It comes right to surface, and it has up to 10% copper in it and other metals to make it a very high-grade lens. Now, I would point out that this lens is at the farthest extension in a VMS system that you can get. So what generally happens is you keep following that VMS system down, and as you get closer to the heat engine, it gets higher and higher grade. But already at the extension, they've got extremely high grade. In reality, this is in the Bathurst mining camp, which is one of the most important VMS mining camps in the world. They have the highest grades of any massive sulfide occurrence in this entire region. And there's been some elephant mines in close proximity to them. So this is a place that's known for big VMS deposits. And in this case, they've got an extremely high-grade lens that comes right to surface. And they are now drilling to find the source of where that lens came from. Now, when I started doing my homework on them, I noticed that there was a package of rocks that trended north to south. And in close proximity to the lens, there's a hinge in that rock. And that is a likely suspect for where the source of the lens came from. And you can see it beautifully in the geophysics as well. So they're drilling for that right now. Now, in between the time that they had that big move up in May and in December, when they started drilling to find the source of the lens, they were waiting for permits. So they had permits on their California Lake project, which is about 20 kilometers away. And there they went based on reprocessed geophysical data that was analyzed by a company called EarthX. They're one of these big data companies that use algorithms to filter out the geophysical noise to then vector into where they should pinpoint where they should drill to find massive sulfides. And it worked like a charm. There they found a series of lenses that had massive sulfides in them with excellent grades, especially when you consider, again, that it's at the top of a VMS system. Now they got to find the source of that VMS system and what they found at their 9 Mile Brook lens. This is a very exciting situation, and yet the company only has about a $15 million valuation. You're potentially looking for targets that could, make this company over a $500 million valuation. So it's very cheaply valued. I love the trend that it's on. I like the work that they're doing. I like the catalysts that they have coming up, and everything is pointing in the right direction for 9 Mile Metals. And that's why I think I have 9 Mile Metals as my top base metal exploration company. I'm glad they're a sponsor of my show because I can do a lot of interviews with them when they have news out. I've already done some with Patrick Highsmith, Patrick Cruikshank. Sorry, I got two Patricks in my mind. You go to my YouTube channel and you look for at Rocks and Stocks News, and you'll find the interviews that I did with executives of 9 Mile. Okay, so then I think I touched on some of these deep value plays earlier when I talked about i-80 Gold and Blackrock, so IAU and BRC. Another deep value play is Highgold Mining. They're in Alaska, and they have a resource. So in my year-end review report, they are under my deep value plays and also in my tax loss selling picks. And look at here again, you got another company that bottomed out here in late December, and it's already proving to be a good tax loss selling pick. Why they're a deep value pick is they already have a resource of about 1.2 million ounces of gold with a grade of about close to 10 grams per ton of gold. And they've drilled into that this year, and it looks like that resource, as they follow it, is got the potential to widen quite dramatically. And that's why I think that they have a target that's in the 2 to 5 million ounce gold target at their JT deposit, where they already have this excellent looking resource. I mean, trying to find 1 million plus ounce gold deposits with around a 10 gram grade is not an easy task. There's not a lot of those around. And that's why I made it a deep value play. Another deep value play, before I get off of the JT deposit. So I think JT has a chance to be much bigger than it is now, and they have more results to come from that. So I think they've got a lot of news ahead of them from what they have in Alaska. But also in Alaska, late last year's season, they found this thick intersection of super bonanza grade gold and silver. The gold was in the 500 and some grams per ton over a 6 meter intersection, and they had kilograms worth of silver in that as well, which made it one of the best drill hole results in 2021. So then they got back up there this year, and they drilled a series of holes in that Ellis zone, they're calling now, around this bonanza grade stuff, and they showed that it has excellent continuity. And what makes it even more exciting is it's sort of in a, let's say, a horizontal body, and that's right at surface. So it's an open pit target with bonanza grades of gold in it with excellent continuity. This could also be a very large resource, and they've got other targets that are equally as impressive. So Highgold Mining is a very undervalued play as far as I'm concerned. They've also got an exciting play out in Ontario that I'm quite bullish on because they found that was a historical mine that found some of the highest grade gold in Ontario. The rock is so full of gold that some of the specimens from that mine are actually in the Ontario Museum and the Royal Ontario Museum, and because it's just riddled with gold. A good place to look for extreme high grade gold is where you already know there's extreme high grade gold. So I love both their projects. I think it makes this company very undervalued. It's already been a good pick in the tax loss selling picks, and I think this company is a very deep value play and headed a lot higher. Okay, now I'm going to go to the next important thing that I talked about in my year-end review was what I call cash-making machines of mines. Okay, SilverCrest has a cash-making machine that they recently brought into commercial production. And the stock broke out in November. The 50-day moving average is on a good trajectory. It looks like they're only days away from a golden cross. And what makes this such an exciting play is that the grades that they're finding are very high grade. The costs are very low. This makes for very high margins, and it's going to turn this into what I call a cash machine. And if you're looking for a silver mining company with a outstanding future ahead of them, SilverCrest is a good one for you to look at. I think they're going much higher in 2023, and they're only a few days away from a golden cross. And there you go. That's the SilverCrest story. Another company that I've been following in my reports since they were like $1 stock is you got to go back, because I started following them, started banging on the table when they were way back here. But as they were moving this in, they moved their project in the Camino Rojo project into commercial production and around here. And as they've done that, the stock has been performing very well. Oh, it's been performing well. It bottomed in July. Higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. And higher highs, higher highs, higher highs, higher highs. They've gone through a golden cross not too long ago. This is another one. If you want a gold mining company that's low cost, their production makes them one of the top 10 lowest cost producers of gold in the entire gold mining business. They have a great future ahead of them. They're just getting started at commercial production at Camino Rojo. As they continue to put out quarterly reports and show the profitability, it's only going to get better for them. I think this one could be a double in 2023 without any problem whatsoever. So there's my cash-making machines of mines for those that want exposure to gold and silver with a little less risk. All right. My beaten down gold miner that had a copper kicker that has really got their stock into overdrive is McEwen Mining. Pretty happy that I've interviewed Rob McEwen a few times in the last couple of years. When the stock was on the downs, I always would give him a call and say, hey, I think you guys are very undervalued. You want to come on a show? And he would be gracious enough to. And he's even more gracious to have seen his stock double from where I was banging the table on it when they were oversold. And as you can see, they're making a much stronger market. In November, they had a significant breakout. They broke through their 50-day moving average and their 200-day moving average. Now they're trading well above their 200-day and their 50-day, and they recently went through a golden cross. What's exciting about them is that they had troubles with their gold mines, that they've ironed out those problems. They're bringing the costs of production down and improving the grades. That's a recipe to make a turnaround for a gold mine that's been gold mines that have been struggling. But what really has driven this move that you see here is they've also got this very large copper project in South America that they plan to spin out to the shareholders in 2023. McEwen Mining will maintain a 68, somewhere around a 65, 68% ownership of McEwen Copper. And then McEwen Copper will be a publicly traded company. What they have at that copper mine is exactly what the copper mining industry needs. They need more copper deposits that can be big mines. That is exactly what they have. And this year is going to be the year that they kind of launch it into its own public company that McEwen Mining also owns a chunk of. So as they've been coming out with good news on the turnaround of the gold mines and moving ahead with what they're working on the copper project, the stock has sort of blasted off. I now think it's trading at a more reasonable valuation relative to the assets. I still think it's very undervalued. They've got a lot of catalysts ahead of them. And I got a lot of bullish things to say about McEwen Mining. And by the way, I don't know if the people that were giving me a hard time are listening to this, but I just want to say I told you so. So there's my told you so call on McEwen Mining. All right, Origin Mining is my only royalty company that I pick. And I think it's going to continue to be my only royalty company that I pick. Earlier today, I had a pre-interview for an upcoming interview that I'm going to do with Origin. And Origin is a special, well, it's special to me for more than one reason. I've known the guy who runs the company, Paddy Nicol, for a couple decades. We worked together for a very long time at a large geological consulting firm. His uncle was our mentor in geology. His uncle was an extremely talented geologist. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but he left Paddy and I with a lot of knowledge about the exploration business and the mining industry. And so Paddy and I have known each other for very long. In fact, we've known each other for so long. Before Paddy started his own company called Evram, which merged into Origin Royalties with another company, I remember when Paddy was thinking about creating a royalty company, and we had some great conversations about that, and I encouraged him to do it. He did it. He's been doing it for probably over 10 years now. And what makes them special is that they are one of these royalty companies that in the past they were a prospect generator. So because of their experience in prospect generating, they were able to organically grow by finding and partnering up with other companies and keeping a royalty to organically grow their royalty portfolio. The first asset that they did that with is the Ermitaño mine in to the south of Las Chispas that I talked about earlier. And Ermitaño is the best performing mine that First Majestic has. And Origin has a 2% royalty on that. That's generating lots of free cash payments for them, and it has a great future. I encourage you to follow and look for when I do an interview with Patty Nickel, because we talked about a lot of great things today prior to the interview that we're going to do. And we've got a lot to talk about at Ermitaño and at their silicon asset. This is another organically grown project that they got in its early stages. They dressed it up. They brought in a major mining company. Now that major mining company, Anglo, has found a 3.4, their maiden resource was a 3.4 million ounces of oxide gold in Nevada. Those are very rare these days. Most of the oxide, that's what's been for the last 40 years or so. That's what most of the mining has been, is oxide deposits in Nevada. Now they're hard to find, but these guys have found a 3.4 million ounce maiden resource, and Origin owns a 1% royalty on it. So that's another exciting asset for them as a royalty company. And I encourage you to look for that, that show coming up. Okay, so I've pretty much gone through the key themes that I want to talk about today. And what I'm going to close off the show with is I've got a series of interviews that I'm working on for next week. Origin Royalties, this last company I talked about, I'm going to be doing an interview with Patty Nickel. I think we're tentatively scheduled for Monday, so look forward to that. Later in the week, I've reached out to Rob McEwen, and we're organizing a interview for McEwen Mining later in the week. So I hope to have Rob McEwen on an interview next week. A new company that I'm following, and will do my first introductory interview to my audience, is G2 Goldfields, GTW's. They've got an exciting situation in Guyana of a high-grade gold resource that I think is being undervalued. As I mentioned earlier, I did an interview earlier today. It's Friday, January the 6th, with Amex. You can find that again on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, and on my on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Sterling Metals, I'm going to try and get an interview with them next week as well. And also Golden Lake, when I talked earlier about the Eureka trend, Golden Lake Exploration added Don Hoy, who's a very talented geologist, as their VP exploration in the last couple months of 2022. He's been doing a bunch of really good geological sleuthing, and we're going to do an interview next week. I think it will probably be on Wednesday, and I'm very excited about that. I joined that company as an advisor, and they are also a sponsor of my shows for a lot of good reasons. How they are related to what's happening with their neighbors at Paycore and I-80 Gold, and they're finding same kind of CRD at Golden Lake, and now they need to follow that up. And Don Hoy, the VP Exploration, and I, and we might even be able to swing Mike England, the CEO of the company, onto the interview as well. So yeah, we got, it's been a great year. 2022 was a great year, even though for me at Rocks and Stocks, for my sponsors, had a lot in a difficult market for mining companies. My sponsors did very well. And the reason is a combination. They got great projects. They do a lot of work, and they're eager to tell their story. The difficult companies, the ones that were getting beaten up for most of 2022 and still are getting beaten up, were the ones that are pulling in their horns. They're not doing as much work, and they certainly they're not eager to get out there and tell their story. So I'm really quite proud of how my sponsors and my picks and my interview companies have done during a difficult market in 2022. And I believe strongly that that is setting them up for exceptional things in 2023. So I'm looking forward to a lot of interviews this year with executives of mining companies. I've also got the writing bug again. A lot of my viewers know me from my days when I used to only do my reports in written version. In fact, I started out with just a small email list back in 2005. And now I've got quite an impressive audience that likes my videos, my interviews, my special reports like this one, and my writing. So I'm writing a lot more these days. A lot of that's because of how much I like using Substack. And in fact, I like Substack so much that you go to my website now and it tells you to go to my Substack. They make it easy for me to write. They make it easy for me to do videos. They make it easy for me to present that stuff. And they make it easy for me to send it out to all the people on my email list. So this is creating quite an audience for my videos and also for my written work. And thank you very much for all of that. And I promise to be putting out a lot of content in 2023. So as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Speak with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. A bunch of the companies I talked about today are sponsors of my show. So I've done a bunch of interviews with management that you can find on my YouTube channel, Rocks and Stocks News on YouTube. And you can also find them on my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Do your homework. Understand the companies that you invest in. You'll make more intelligent decisions, less emotional decisions. And that in itself is a recipe for success as an investor in any sector, and especially when it comes to the mining sector. Have a great day. Have a great 2023, and we'll talk to you soon.